You're listening to the Download Youth Ministry Podcast.
3, 2, 1. Hey, everybody! Welcome to the Download Youth Ministry Podcast, part of the DYM Podcast Network. This is episode 340. Doug Fields here with my good buddy Matt McGill, who is back. He's back. He's occasionally making his way onto the podcast. He's
B-Team. So great to be here today.
That's right.
Yeah,
Hey, but we'll get a couple shows with you in the next.
What?
It's great.
He went from starting varsity to kind of injured reserve.
Yeah, not even water helper.
Yeah.
Hey.
Anyway, and
Some ice in this water.
and we have
Team coach.
our queen's replacement.
Queen B.
Queen B, there you go.
Be
Queen
There it
B
is.
team, Jessica Sanchez.
What does
who's,
the B stand
who's the
for?
A team in our
You don't want to know.
Yeah.
C-D-E-F-G. Gotcha.
And DYM co-founder Josh Griffin.
Hey, what's up?
We got-
I'm still a
B-Team.
co-founder if
Yes,
I'm not a
you
part
are.
of this.
You are
I
a
would-
co-founder.
Yeah, gosh, that kind
Well,
of my feelings a little bit.
if you're not a
Founding
co-founder
member.
anymore, you're always it's kind of like an Eagle Scout, right? You're
Right.
always a
Just like
co-founder.
the Waz.
It's a founding member.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You're a founding
actually
member.
kind of are like a Waz.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I like to
nobody
think of it-
remembers him anymore.
I like
That's
to think
right.
of it as
Totally irrelevant.
Matt was a close friend of the co-founders. That's what. Just kidding, man. I know that hurts. I know it's wounding.
That's great.
There would have
Hey,
to be some substance to that for it to be wounding.
Josh, here's the deal. We have some sponsors. Orange is
We do.
one of them. You and I are going to be part of the Orange Tour
We will.
this fall. You want to go to the Orange Tour.
Yeah.
You're a DYM member. You got $50 off the Orange Tour.
Use it.
Coupon in
Or lose it.
August.
Yeah, you're welcome.
And also for the National Youth Workers Convention, you got a $50 off coupon.
And if you're not signed up, there's still time. Even though the discounts are gone, you can still sign up, and it would be worth every penny you
no, I
spend.
don't think the discounts are gone.
I don't know.
I don't. Try them
somebody
anyway.
check with
Try
Orange.
them.
Discount.
Try the
Yeah.
code if you're a member. Check
Orange
it out.
Tour will work for sure.
Really?
I think so. Hey, and also
I like
we love our friends Leader Treks. And
Leader
they
Treks,
are also
amazing.
a co-sponsor.
Missions
So wonderful.
trips, student leadership curriculum.
GiveCentral.org. Josh, what is that?
Love it. It's an
Yeah, I haven't
online
heard
giving
of that.
platform for pastors and churches and ministries. And so if
Really?
you have any type of giving that is giving to your organization, you can use GiveCentral.org. So check them out.
What kind of
That's
percentage
awesome.
do they take?
It's a massively small
Is it
part.
comparable to like?
It's Fadi's. Fadi's.
It's funny.
Oh,
That's
Give
his-
Central's Fadi's
wow.
thing.
yeah. Our friend
Oh,
Fadi.
gosh.
Who
founded Give Central.
bankrolls
That's
DYM.
very cool.
Yeah, basically the show and this studio would not exist without our friend Fadi. So we
Right,
give him a little
right.
shout out, GiveCentral.org.
GiveCentral.org.
Yeah.
Great. Matt, how's coaching going? Youth ministry coaching.
This
Hey,
show's also
it's
brought to you
going
by
good.
Leading
That's right. It
in
is.
youthministry.com.
Wow.
That's right.
Is it leading in youth ministry?
I thought it was
or
leading
youth
gym.
ministry?
Leading
It's
Gym.
Lead and Gym. No, it's
Leading
leadingyouthministry.com. It's the longest
You got it right.
possible URL.
Notice
out
it's
there in the
slow,
world.
so people can really hear it.
really
Leading
enunciate.
Youth
No, it's going.
Ministry.
It's going good. I mean, it's just kind of a side project, and there's a couple people that are started, and it's been fun, and it's been. It's just I just love talking to people and hearing their stories and challenges that they're facing and there's two people involved right now. One has been in ministry for a few years and so has kind of a different set of questions than another person who's 1 year into ministry.
Oh, that's
and
awesome.
That's cool.
It's just
Okay.
great.
Well,
So-
you've been coaching me ever since I met you when you were in ninth grade, so
got
this
that
is
right.
perfect for you.
Well, and I see that, Matt, you
Yes.
brought a couple. If you're watching on the show, you see you've got Purpose-Driven Youth Ministry in first 2 years. A couple books you
Using
wrote
them
for Doug.
really well.
I wrote them under a pen name, Doug Fields.
You coached him through that. That was, your coaching is
Great.
pretty legendary, bro.
Yeah.
That's actually how Matt feels about my books.
that's
Anyway, the
not
only purpose
true.
is they're a mic stand right now.
Right.
To level
Yeah.
tables.
Yeah.
Well, I don't.
He-
I don't
they-
think anyone's even heard of this one.
They
It's-
were.
This one needs to be rewritten. By
They
the way.
were.
The
used
artwork
to,
alone is
They
phenomenal.
were used to hold his door open. And he
Yeah.
That's right.
Hey, there's two questions we want to jump into. One is from Brett Salisbury, and one is
Okay.
from our buddy Jeff Self. Not that Brent's not our buddy.
Yeah,
He's our
Brett's
buddy.
totally
Talk
our
about-
buddy, too. Salisbury Steak, we
So
love him.
Jeff says this. I'm excited that you're doing a podcast recording marathon. I like to cut my grass unless I have a DYM podcast to listen to while doing it. My grass is getting pretty long waiting for you. I love teaching. It's one of the parts of my job where I have the most passion. As a matter of fact, Jeff Self has submitted several manuscripts to DYM,
Yep.
and our editors always comment on how good they are.
The last one was an editor's choice, even.
Wow.
Which is a
Wow,
pretty
you now
high.
have editor's choice.
Yeah, since you left, we've upped the game.
Really,
Oh,
just
yeah.
hurting people's feelings left and right.
What if we had an editor's, not an editor's choice on the other
Right.
products?
Yeah.
It's good.
Yeah, be more truthful.
It's
It's
okay.
okay.
Just a neutral sign.
Yeah. It's just a bronze medal.
This is an average resource.
Anyhow, Jeff's stuff's
he
really
says,
good.
I've considered trying to get into speaking at camps or events, but I'm not sure the best way to go about it. Any suggestion? And Brent Salisbury says, I've noticed more and more youth workers who are looking for speaking gigs almost advertising themselves. Have you found that most youth speakers were looking for those opportunities, or were they accidentally pushed into speaking at retreats, conferences, camps because of word of mouth? Doug would love to hear the story of how you got involved with YS and their conferences back in the day.
Yeah, tell us.
Back before
Speaking of
there was
YS,
dirt.
we're thankful for National Youth Workers Convention being one of our sponsors as well.
Thank you.
Just made that up. But we'll see at YS this fall.
I think
Doug,
you're
how
sponsoring them, right?
How did you?
Exactly.
You're so true. How did you get into speaking? That's a good question. See the co-host transition right there.
Yeah,
Nicely done,
Way
Josh.
to go. Well, let's answer Jeff's question.
Okay.
But what's the best way to go into that? And part of it is when people ask this question, I always want to step back and say, let's just posit motive.
Yeah.
Okay, just posit motive and say, do I want to do it because I feel like it's a gift and I want to express my gift? I feel like I want to be known. I feel like, we know some people in the youth ministry space.
Yeah.
All they're trying to do is be known. They're trying to, they don't.
And is
they
that
don't-
good or bad?
Well,
I just can't tell by the tone of your voice.
No, I get it.
I mean,
And
I've got
part
all
of it
sorts
is
of assumptions.
I have,
but-
I have the same assumptions, and my assumptions is that they don't have the background in youth ministry to
Their charisma exceeds their
prop
wisdom.
up. Yes, that's a good
Yeah.
line.
Wow.
Their
Yeah.
charisma
Put that on a
exceeds their
T-shirt.
wisdom.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
It should be in Proverbs.
Love it.
Proverbs 32.
We have elevated Matt's wisdom to that of King Solomon. Continue.
Biblical level.
So
We're the sons of
I
Argor.
think you just want to be careful with your motive, that you're not trying to just be somebody. But I think you start by making yourself available to your friends in your network to say, hey, why don't you come speak at my Wednesday night? I'll come speak your Wednesday night, and get in front of a different audience. I mean, you can think you're a good communicator in front of your own audience because they know
That's
you
true.
and you have built-in credibility.
Yep.
Yeah.
But you step into a new audience, it's a different game. You've got
is.
to, now all of a sudden they're going like, who are you? I don't care what you are. Why should I listen to you? So I think that's where you start. You start by speaking at other youth ministries just as favors and share with friends. And then, if it is a gifting, I think people are going to find you.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you got to put yourself out there a little bit, right?
Just don't add it to your Twitter bio when you
you
Yeah.
write a camp speaker.
Yeah, like nationally acclaimed speaker, and you're like, you've taught at 4 youth groups. Like,
Right.
I just think there's a need to be seen.
Yeah.
There's a desire to be noticed. There is a thirst inside everyone for fame, popularity, the spotlight, the stage. Not saying it's a bad thing. This is how it works. There are people on stage that communicate.
Yeah.
I just think there's a difference between a person with the right heart and the right motives and not. And sometimes you can sniff it out. Like you go to a conference and someone says, "How do I become you?"
I mean, I
Yes.
like,
I totally am there. I think that even at Saddleback for years running the intern program, I mean, a large number of the interns came only because they wanted a resume thing and to be the next, Doug Fields or whatever. And so, yeah, I get that. And
Right.
I think we've all encountered a lot of that. I think that though legitimately, there are some people that God is calling to raise up to be the next voices in youth ministry. And practically speaking, what does that look like? How do you do that? How do you take some first, second steps?
yeah.
Well, I think if you're going to be the next voice in youth ministry, is be a voice in the trenches.
Right.
Yeah.
Work hard at your craft in your local church, whether you have 5 kids or 5,000 kids in your youth group, and become good at what you do as a youth worker in the profession. And then if there are opportunities that are lent to you, or you seek them out through friends, I would just start there. I think the good communicators are the ones that don't have to promote themselves.
Yeah.
That they've just, somebody heard you at this, or this guy was at our camp and he was great, and you might want to talk, we've talked about this before at DYM, is do we have a speakers network?
Right.
Because people are always asking, who's a good
Yeah,
Right.
need a
Camp
winter
speaker.
retreat speaker, need a camp speaker, need
Right.
someone to fill in while I'm gone, whatever.
Yeah, so there is a need for
Absolutely
that.
demand, sure.
You know.
Yeah, I would say camps have this built in. They have to find speakers for their weeks of camp, and so if you're looking for somebody, a camp has vetted them.
And
they
that's
trust
like the main
them.
reason why a youth pastor goes to camp.
They've
so they don't
delivered.
have
So
to
I would
teach,
say,
right?
I would say, offer yourself to a camp if that is a gifting and a passion. You have experience there. I think that would be a great start. And what I've noticed is a lot of places will say, "Oh, I saw your name on X camp website." And thought you'd be perfect for our retreat, or come do our thing, whatever.
Right.
So that would be a step that you could take. But I like the friends of friends, and when you start off, I would say, the money thing is oftentimes a part of the conversation too.
Yeah.
And so
it's not like youth ministry is paying, lots and lots of money.
Yeah. So I would say yes, get some experience.
I like the
we can't
idea
pay
of
you.
partnering
Say yes.
with local churches, especially like if you're a part of a youth worker network, and to take a message that you've already taught and go teach it at another youth ministry. That's a good idea. And this might not necessarily be like, building your ability to teach, but I think it's good to teach in other ministries in your church. You used to do the membership class for years at Saddleback, and not because you needed to hone your skills. I think you did that to be a team player and to also
to
get some
recruit volunteers.
Yeah, we don't really like to use the word recruit. But
invite people to ministry.
Right,
That's right. Sharing kingdom work.
That could be my favorite thing that's happened in like a year. That's great.
Hands slapped all the time at church.
What's that?
We're getting our hands slapped all the time at church. We're saying volunteer now.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
You can't say volunteer.
We're not allowed
What
to
do you-
use the word
You
volunteer
say
at our church.
What do you say?
Really?
Leader,
Team member?
team
Slave
member.
labor. Not allowed to say
Apprentice.
Servant of the
volunteer.
Lord Most High.
Yeah.
Amen, brother.
Apprentice is more of
Apprentice,
higher
wow.
value
Yeah,
terminology.
Yeah.
than volunteer.
Every
That
member's
is
a
so
volunteer.
funny.
Every member's a minister.
Yes,
All right, I get
minister.
it. All right.
I can imagine the conversation.
You're
that went
just
into
cuddling with that mic
that went
today.
into that decision.
Look at Matt, just
hugging
like
it.
Yeah.
a small newborn
I
child.
Koala
I
embracing.
move around a lot. I got a fidget, so this way it kind of helps me
Yeah,
focus.
speaking of
Smart.
speaking
not
of
like the
sound, Josh, why don't you
conversation's
introduce
moving
our
that good.
our
Well,
guests
we have
in the
some
studio?
rich audio today because we brought a couple of youth pastor friends up from San Diego.
We brought
and
them
I said
up?
we brought them up, meaning
They volunteered.
They wrote in
I mean,
and
they
said, "Your
decided to
sound-
apprentice
themselves.
themselves.
your sound
as
is
audio.
terrible. Please let us help you." And I said, "Come on up." They're from San
That's
Diego,
really cool, by the
Escondido.
way.
I said, "Come up. We'll get incredibly rich audio, and we'll go get some lunch." And they've been great. So this is
way
Nick
to
and,
go.
and Jason. They're
And
hanging
what,
out today.
Escondido's about 40 miles from here.
Yeah. So
Are you guys at the same church? I didn't ask that question.
Yeah, and Jason's been to
Nice.
DYM 100, and both of them are coming to DYM 200.
while I was vetting Nick, because his email was like half really kind and half like, "You guys are pretty terrible," I Googled him, and on the church website it says junior high youth director
National
slash
speaker.
junior high director
really-
slash facilities, and I went, "That's my favorite
My
thing
man.
of all time."
There you go.
Because that's how we roll right here. We do youth ministry,
Lynn Ellis,
and we
years
clean
ago.
the van, and we clean the foyer, and that's it. I'm a fan. I
Hey,
was
well,
like, we can bring him up.
Getting back to our,
Yeah.
our questions, I would say I'd add on this. The best youth workers I've met are not the best speakers. Okay,
So
so
it's good. Okay.
the ones that,
Oh, yes.
sometimes you're the best youth workers that are loving teenagers, that
Yeah.
are caring, meeting with families, caring for parents, developing volunteers.
Yeah.
Oftentimes they're behind the scenes and they are just crushing it in every
Yeah.
area. But they get away as a decent communicator in their youth group
It's
because
true.
they're so beloved.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
And
Yeah.
so sometimes you go, and I've said this, I've been speaking at youth specialty stuff for 30 years, and I've said, most of us sitting in those chairs, you want to be on the brochure, but those people that are on the brochure are not.
They're only there because they can't actually serve people's needs.
Because they're not very good at youth ministry.
Yeah.
Well,
no, I mean, that's
I would
not
say,
true.
I
but-
would say some of them are
Sure.
and have proven themselves, and
Yeah.
that's why they've been asked, and others of them are either
Personalities.
self-promoted or
Yeah.
personalities or whatever it might be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or they know the owner, they're friends of a friend, whatever. Yeah. Riding coattails.
Yeah.
Worked for me.
Oh, man.
I have just one last thing to say about that.
No, not about that. About that.
Oh, yeah, about that too. I find that the people that I have most admired, who God has given them a platform, never sought a platform. they were diligent, they were faithful, they served, and they were found by people of influence and were given a platform.
Yeah.
And so those who have been in the trenches, even if they are no longer in the trenches, but they're still teaching, they have paid their dues, and they never built a path of success to national popularity.
Yeah.
And so I just think that those are the people that I even think more profoundly make an impact in like my life as they teach than those who did build a path of my goal is to speak at whatever.
Right.
Yeah. So maybe it'd be
good
helpful for us to talk about some national speakers whom we don't respect.
I brought a
let's-
list. No,
And we're back, everybody. That was a lively conversation.
Would
You had to
they
cut in
be
the audio.
national speakers?
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah.
Well, hey, my
that's great.
backstory is I was just invited. I was
cool.
invited by my youth pastor was Jim Burns, who knew Mike Yaconelli, and Jim put in a good word and said, "Doug is a good communicator. I know you're starting an event for teenagers, and he's a good communicator
Side
to
Up.
teenagers."
Is that what it was?
No, it was called
DCLA?
Grow For It.
Oh.
Grow
Grow
For It. It was
For
a
It.
youth specialties event that lasted like 2 years, and after they canned it, Mike Yaconelli asked me if I would be interested in being a part of the youth specialties speaking team.
Right.
And so it wasn't like it was a friend of a friend. It was a comment. But, the reality is, you wind the clock back 30 years, I worked, and
just
still have worked hard on communicating.
Right.
So people who are good communicators, they're not naturally good communicators. They worked hard at it. If they make it
Yes.
seem like it's natural, I think maybe there's a 1% that are natural, but the rest of the people who look like they're good communicators, they're working really hard behind the scenes to be a good communicator.
Well, except there are a lot of people that are very popular and you like their message, but then when you're done, like you didn't really learn anything. So those people are pure personality and they're just
But there's a caliber of talk though, like an inspiration talk, where you're like, I didn't walk away with my mind blown by the theology, but I'm inspired to go be a better servant of the Most High.
But here's, just from being your friend for so long and you just having to put up with that. But one of the things, I was actually just talking about this a couple weeks ago with one of the people that I was coaching, is that
leadinginyouthministry.com.
leading in youth ministry.
Cha-ching.
But saying that so here's Doug, like when he gives a message, and like when you do it at Saddleback, but even when you do it at other places, after that first message, you would invite 4, 5, 6 people into the room, and they were friends. They weren't just like random off the street, and you would listen to feedback for 20 minutes, 30 minutes or whatever, and sometimes people were negative, and I'm sitting there like, hey buddy, you keep talking, you're gonna lose your something, there was times that it wasn't comfortable but mostly for me, but that kind of humility that says, hey, I want to learn, I want to get better, that's really important to have.
Don't you think
Well,
that's the difference?
It's
Humility.
part of the hard, and it's part of the hard work, because we think, you could say, Josh could speak somewhere, and I could go, hey, how'd you think you did? And he could go, well, I thought I did great. But the reality is, Josh is not the judge.
Exactly.
The audience is the judge.
Exactly.
So this last weekend, I
I don't
spoke
mind
at
being the judge.
I spoke at Mariners, and Allison actually was, who's in our, runs DYM, who's in our room right now. She was just there as a attender, and I said, hey,
congregant.
I said, come
Not as a volunteer.
backstage.
Yeah, make
Come
this better.
backstage and help me.
it.
And there was how many? 6 or 7 people backstage that just like, hey, what'd you sense? What'd you feel? Because as a communicator, I'm working hard all week. Put a message together that I'm not exactly sure is building a bridge to the audience. So if you don't get that audience feedback, now some of the people that are listening, maybe the majority, don't have the opportunity to teach that same message, multiple times.
But getting feedback,
getting
having a quick debrief,
safe people. People who understand communication, because if you're asking people who don't understand communication, you're going to get maybe feelings or I like this.
Well, and there's style differences too. Like
Absolutely.
I might pitch a joke like, this is a funnier line, but it's not your style. That's no big deal.
Yeah.
But I will say this, the friend, the trusted aspect. I mean, Jessica did this for me for years at churches. She would say something that was very hard to hear, but I trust her.
Yep.
And her perspective, her history, her love for our ministry. And so I would take that feedback almost invariably and use it. because I really trust God's Spirit working in her and in collaboration, us, and it's a powerful thing.
And you would even email me your messages
Ahead
as
of
you were
time
working on
sometimes, yeah.
them and send them around to trusted friends.
Yep.
Just wanting to learn and grow and know, is there something that I'm missing that I'm not communicating to the girls in the room? Give me a female perspective.
Well, and never once did that process fail. The message was always better. Always in some way.
And
Like
so
Matt,
if the message bombed, it was your fault, is what you're saying?
but Matt would say, move the scripture here, or Doug would say, this is a funnier line, and Jessica would be like, I don't know, just start over. And so it was, but the message was always better when it's done in community.
Yeah.
So
Well, speaking about bombs, Matt, you just said, like, you just spoke to the high school ministry at Saddleback, and you said you bombed.
Yeah, it was terrible.
you didn't bomb.
Yeah.
I heard
You
it was
weren't
packed.
there.
I heard it was great.
Not because I was there. It was the first night. I wasn't packed because
Packed because they didn't know it was all downhill.
Why did you think you
Why
bombed?
did you
Yeah.
bomb?
No, it went long, and I went off a little bit on. I mean, I like to, I don't want to waste anybody's time, so I write it out, make sure it's good. There was a couple things that weren't as clear as they could be. Morgan, I had him on stage, which was cuter than cute.
Morgan is your son.
Morgan's my middle son.
He's hilarious
who
and
is
awesome.
Just really fabulous. And that was funny, but probably went a little too long.
No,
But it was okay.
anything for
I
the
mean,
bit.
it was, and also I hadn't taught in about 6 months or maybe even a little bit.
Did
8
you have
months.
other people
So-
tell you bombed, or did you?
Well, there
just
was no one
feel
in the
it?
there was no one in the crowd I could trust. I mean,
Okay, so
and
you
not
just-
trust there was no one there like Pogue, the leader, like he's great. And
Right, he's gonna tell you did a
and
great
he's
job.
Gonna, yeah, I mean
Yeah.
he's gonna be positive, but there was nobody,
Okay, so when you told me you bombed, it wasn't from empirical data from other people. It was-
Kids
You
were
felt
screaming
that.
with
Is
their
there-
ears bleeding.
I
and
don't
yeah.
I don't know if you've met me, but all my data is my opinions are empirical. So
Proverbs
I'm
32,
pretty
32.
sure.
Yeah.
No, yeah, it was just based on what
So
I
it's
felt.
feeling. So
Yeah.
again, so when a lot of times when you think you bombed, and I have this weird thing. Sometimes when I'm on stage and I think I'm killing it, is when I get the least amount of feedback, and other times on stage when I feel like, oh, this is not
Yeah.
working.
Isn't that interesting?
People are like
Yeah.
responding to Jesus, their lives are
Yep.
changed, and you're crying in a corner in the back.
Yeah.
Right, in the fetal position. just
I
like,
do think it
"Take
does
me
come
now,
back
Lord.
to humility, though.
Take me.
Yeah.
If you're trying to be the next big thing and all you can think about is the stage and the lights and the whatever, I would say just check all of that. All of us have to, no matter how many times you've spoken and where you've spoken, we all have to check our humility and be humble.
Yeah.
Check our pride. I think that's the difference between the person who's a little too much that way
Yeah.
and someone who God can really use in a dramatic way.
You know, this is turning into a little bit of a speaking message deal. But
Yeah.
Yep.
last Friday, right before my message, I tweeted something that just got tremendous response, and I thought it's interesting because it was just about, here it is. I've been preaching
Yep,
almost
I
every
saw this.
weekend since I was 18 years old. And on Fridays, I still feel anxious, unprepared, unworthy, unqualified, overly insecure, fearful, and the verge of diarrhea stage. I keep thinking I'll grow out of this. Hashtag still waiting. And it was a much liked tweet, but it was like totally real, raw Friday. Like,
Yeah.
you
Yep.
turn in your outline,
Yeah.
and you're like, I maybe am the only one in the world that's interested in this right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that resonates. That's a great tweet. Yeah, just be humble. Don't be that guy.
I'm glad to know I'm not the only one that feels diarrhea on Friday afternoon before preaching.
Do you feel diarrhea, or do you just?
And
have
here's
it?
Jessica
What's the
though.
difference between
Well, you
having
do-
and feeling it?
Not really. You don't have any nerves down there?
I'm gonna move along. I'm gonna move us past that.
Okay.
Here's what I love about Jess. When she gets up to speak, she knows that she's not like the rah go show whatever.
Yeah.
But God's Spirit works through her in dramatic and amazing ways, and so you don't give off any impression that you are like not ready for the stage but I'm telling you, God uses you in huge
It's
ways.
like not my
so
favorite
cool.
place, and people oftentimes are like, what do you mean, you're so natural?
Yeah.
But it is so humbling because I have to fight so many insecurities, because my number one thought is, will they like me? And that is just the wrong thing.
yeah.
But that's something that God has used to just minister to me is it's not about them liking you, Jess. It's not about what you look like.
Yeah. If you need a camp speaker,
it's like
Jessica
tough.
Sanchez.
Don't call me.
And if she's not available, Matt McGill. There's 2 options for your next
There-
D
yeah.
He'll tell you whether you bombed or not.
Yeah, he really will.
But here is the thing about will they like me? That is a part of communication, though.
It is.
Yeah.
So it's not like, will they like my hair or my blouse?
Right.
But it is, part of communication is you are winning over the approval of a resistant audience to the acceptance of what you're trying to communicate.
Yeah.
And it's a very vulnerable position.
Yeah.
Tori, my daughter, who's been in a youth ministry position for 7 years, is also in the back corner of our podcast studio today, bringing in my granddaughter. She doesn't like speaking, and yet when she does, she's great. She's a great communicator. She's super funny. She's
Way
vibrant.
better than her father.
Yeah, I mean, and when she first started, I was like, oh gosh, if I could command a stage like that, in my 20s, but she doesn't like it, so she doesn't ever volunteer for it or raise her hand for it. But when she's given that opportunity, and I think, we need stronger and more female communicators in our youth ministries, so that girls can go, oh, I could be that.
Yeah, so stop letting down all those girls, you guys. You're just letting
No,
down.
I have a daughter.
You guys are
and
ladies are letting down the church.
Constantly taught by guys. And I love it. I mean, Katie, who sits in this podcast so often,
A-team.
is a wonderful example of a incredible communicator who loves Jesus, great pastor, happens to be female, but she is an incredible role model. I love that kind of stuff. It's good. So yeah, just don't want it too much and be humble. There you go.
Yeah.
So are we going to do any more questions? Or
We're just doing a new show. That was it. We're good. Got any more speaking questions?
Well, let's talk about your
You're
prep
the
for a minute.
co-host.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Prepping a talk is really, really fun. I would say I start all different ways. Point number one. Have a good time. Here you go. I start all different ways. Sometimes I start prepping by I find the scripture and I'm like, this is the scripture. And I'm just going to be honest with you. Sometimes
That's
I don't.
1% of the time.
Sometimes I don't start with scripture. And I know that might even sound a little heretical, but sometimes I might start with, that is a really powerful way of communicating, like that illustration or that video or this sentence.
That dog will hunt.
This sentence is so sometimes prep doesn't start, and oftentimes it does, but it doesn't always start with my like devotion time that turns into message prep and whatever. One of the stories I like to tell is about the series 11 versus the World that we did a long time ago, and 11 versus the World was a Women's World Cup commercial. And it was like, it shows like the cleats and the soccer ball and the lights. And then it says 11 versus the world. The women will destroy it, whatever. And I was like, ooh, 11 versus the world. That's
Isn't
really
there 9
good.
people on the field in soccer?
I don't know.
It's 11?
11.
Oh,
yeah, I don't really know.
Makes sense now. I'm confused all this time.
And so
it was 9 plus the coach and trainer.
Yeah, so I'm going to take it. I'm going to take it because it's 11 versus the world. And I'm like, that is the most brilliant, like, oh, I love it. How could I use that? And I thought, well, the disciples, it's 12. Bummer. And I thought, well, Judas, hold on. And all of a sudden, 11 versus the world just became this hook that I was what? Matt, don't mock
It could
me.
have been 12 against the world.
It had to be 11.
It had to be.
Of course. It had to be 11. So anyhow, sorry, Matthias or Matthias, whatever, the replacement disciple, he's out. But for me, that prep,
that should have been Paul.
That whole series, that talk started with a Women's World Cup commercial. And so I think look for inspiration in unlikely places. I mean, one of the things that Fields taught me a long time ago was always be a collector. And I am constantly collecting, like, ooh, that title, or that verse, or that story, or that illustration, object lesson. I am a collector. I was at an eye exam the week before our student leadership conference this past summer in July, and I've colorblind and I've glaucoma, early stages of glaucoma, whatever. And I was speaking on vision.
You have that?
Yeah.
Oh man.
So I take drops now. It's supposed to stop glaucoma. I don't know, whatever. I can't see you. I think you're over there.
Yeah.
But it turned into this really cool illustration for the message. I was like, ooh, this is personal and it's insightful, I think, and it'll help teach the message. And so I find inspiration all over the place. So be a collector. Thank you, Fields, for teaching me that.
It's good.
I
How
like
about you,
collecting.
Jessica? How do you start a message prep?
Well, Not as creatively as Josh does.
Spaz, I get it.
Bible's a good answer.
I mean, it's a great place to start. But a lot
Nothing
of
wrong
it
with
is
convictions. Movement of the Holy Spirit.
Oh gosh. A lot of the prep is whatever passage I'm asked to teach on. Most of the time I've been a collaborator on a series, or I'm given some kind of point of reference to write something, and it's spending time in that passage. It's allowing that passage to become a little bit more personal for me, and then to think about the audience. Oftentimes, though, I feel like I can get lost in a passage, and I need friends like Josh who can help me sort through. So if you're anything like me and you tend to be like, holy cow, how am I going to write a message? They've asked me to write a message on like James. Where do I even begin here? It's being able to have a couple of trusted friends who can say, okay, think about this, or what about this, or what audience are you teaching to again, to help you sort through, because I do find it challenging sometimes when you're just being given this like random broad topic. I start getting super excited about 1,000 ideas. And then it takes me like the first 3 days of message prep just to land on, okay, I'll stick to this chapter, or I'll stick to this passage. Right. Yeah, but I just spend some time in the passage. I find that I'm not as entertaining a teacher. I think I can engage a crowd, but when I really believe and I really have strong conviction about what I'm teaching, and it's been made very personal to me, I feel way more confident teaching it. It's really hard for me to just kind of like jump onto something, but if I've soaked in the scripture and it's begun to do something in my heart, I can teach it with lots of conviction. I feel a lot more grounded on stage.
Great.
That's good.
Yeah.
Really good.
What about you, Matthew?
What about me? Well, quick story. I did in seminary, which I didn't finish. That's still hurts. The preaching class, the preaching professor was phenomenal. So I followed his method for putting together a sermon, and I ended up getting a D-. So I did bomb that one objectively, empirically.
Oh, no.
So next time around, I had to give a second sermon, and I'm like, forget that guy's method. I started with a story, and so I kind of did the Griff method, and
shallow,
found a scripture, and then got an A. So I don't know what that tells you about the professor. But
Well, it's an inductive method of communicating.
There you go.
That's good. That's what it tells you.
But for me, like I think about if I have to start from scratch. So like if it's a broad or whatever category, a broad assignment to come speak on this, which it was when I just spoke at HSM. High school ministry a little while ago. For me, I think about conversations I've had with the people that I'm speaking or teaching to. To me, that's part of like, where are people at? What's going on? What do I feel like they need? And to me, that's where I start. And if I get nothing there, then I default to, so whatever I'm currently reading in scripture or whatever. But once I kind of know what I'm going to do, I put together an outline, and I then try to shorten the outline. And then after I shorten it, I then
Send it to me,
and then shorten it
down.
And then I shorten it, and then I shorten it
series.
Then I spend an hour or two cursing just how dumb all of humanity is, that you got to give a short message. And then once I get over my own ego, but then I start to write it out. So I write it out and word for word, and then read that, and I'll give it 2 reads, which gets massively edited again, and then I give it 5 or 6 reads after that, and then I'm usually ready to go. So
there you go.
So that's my process in a nutshell.
That's very similar to mine.
I wonder why that is.
I love it. Like I said, you've coached me in everything I've done.
There you go.
That's right.
Fields, you got a pro tip for speaking prep for us? I mean, obviously, you have spoken millions of times.
My thing is, teaching the Bible for scripture is super easy.
Yeah.
It is communicating to people that's really difficult. Like, you can give me just about any passage and I go, here's how I would teach this. But then answering the question, like, why would a 14-year-old care is where all the hard work is. And then not only why they would care, because I want them to, with some type of inductive opening, I want them to open their mouth and let the hook sink, and then I can reel them in. But if I can't,
if I fry them over the fryer,
if I can't get them to the point of where they care and answer that question, then I haven't done my job. So I think the most difficult part of message prep is building the bridge to the audience so that they bite, and so they lean in and go, okay, I want this to make a difference in my life. That's the most difficult part. I feel like, I mean, I went to Bible college and I actually finished seminary. Man.
Yeah, way to go.
But
dude, you finished your 3-year seminary in just 2 years.
Well, 2 in a summer.
Yeah. Well, there you go.
Anyway,
Wow, it took me way longer.
Yeah, I'm not saying anything. I don't want any part of this.
but
I did
even
flunk
if,
my
even if I
evangelism
didn't,
discipleship class.
even if I didn't go to Bible college or seminary, I still feel like I've taught the Bible enough to know that I can read a text and go, here's how I would teach it. Again, I don't find that to be the most difficult part.
Yeah.
I mean, we've got millions of commentaries. Other people are way more insightful than me. I can pick something up. It is now like, okay, now I have a unique audience that I need to know who they are, what they care about, what's going to connect, how this will move their heart to a place of action and response. You know, and so they're not just hearing the word, but maybe challenged to be a doer of the word.
Well, Download Youth Ministry has made that easier than ever because there are incredible youth workers out there who are writing, teaching, really have invested a significant amount of time in their curriculum, resource, whatever.
Yeah.
And you can get that for a couple bucks and use it as a great starting point for your prep.
I did last week message I was doing. I thought, oh, this guy's angle is good, and I read it and I went, I like this idea, and I like this idea, and I started with it.
I love it. That's great.
Anyway, hey, okay, this is the speakers edition.
The speaker show.
Allison, that made it easy.
Fun.
Our show notes are pretty focused.
Yeah.
But I got a bunch more questions.
Yeah, we'll get to those.
We'll do that in the next one.
Let's do it.
Send your questions to podcast@downloadyouthministry.com, and we will seek to answer them as best as we can. That's podcast@downloadyouthministry.com. Check out the other shows in the network. We have about 45 of them, or 2, 4, 6, 8 total.
By the time this show airs, we might have a new show or two. We'll
Who
see.
knows?
You mean a whole new podcast show?
A whole new part of the network.
Well, Josh and I are doing something for first 2 years,
sure
so it's
are.
not going to be an ongoing one.
Yeah, it's like top secret too. Can't tell about it. Stop talking.
Yeah. Hey, and Jessica Sanchez will be speaking at the National Youth Workers Convention.
Yes,
November
Find me in the
15th
restroom the day
through-
before.
Diarrhea, cha-cha-cha.
Feeling that
Feeling her diarrhea.
Feeling it.
You realize you can feel things without your hands.
Very
right?
excited.
Yes,
going
we
kinda
were
literal.
working on the
Okay.
schedule for NYWC, National Youth Workers Convention, and we've got, I think, some really good spots for you. You're gonna kill it.
Here's what's funny about speaking. So these are people that are quote unquote pros,
Right,
that are submitting titles that I'm
they're-
looking at
they're
from
terrible.
Josh, and I'm going, I would.
Oh gosh,
this-
that was mine.
no. Actually, just the
legitimately,
opposite.
we were like, oh, that's a good.
Yeah,
title.
you looked at your title and it was something to the effect of like how to develop healthy small groups. I mean, it was like, okay, super clear.
Yeah, 5 secrets to developing a great team or whatever. And we were like, okay, that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
As there were some that were like, what is the subject? What
Yeah.
are they talking on? Who are they and why are
That's
they?
a
But
weird
it isn't
title.
even a who are they. It's
It
just
was
such unclear
brutal.
titles.
Yeah. It was
Are we
brutal.
making sushi
Yeah.
or are we learning about the Lord?
Exactly.
It's
Exactly.
all
Yes.
those people that got into the postmodern stuff.
So
It's
here's
just
the deal: when you have
still
your
having
in speaking,
backlash.
when you have the challenge to be between cute or clear, choose clear.
Yes.
Yep.
All right, that's it.
You hear
We're
that?
done.
You hear
Great
that,
job.
Griff?
Episode
Bye,
number
everybody.
300
In the can.
and
48.
40 is in the
72.
can.
Okay.
All right.
Done.
Much love.
Bye.
Bye with good sound, I bet.
I bet it was. Thanks, Nick.